So for years I've wanted to do a video on the law of attraction. And so in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the law of attraction, but I'm also going to connect it with synchronicity. And I know some of you from your comments that Jung is something that you are familiar with. So let's start off with synchronicity. So Jung referred to this as an acausal connecting principle. And so it was a way in which our inner world was connected to the outer world. And I really enjoy hearing some of your synchronicity stories in the comments section. I'll actually share one of my favorite ones where it's the 80s, and my best friend at the time, Jim, and I were very much into Buddhism. That's what we hung out and we studied and talked about. And we were walking through the Kent State Library one day, and a huge library, and I just got this feeling to pick a book out at random, and I stopped and I picked the book out and I opened up the cover, and handwritten was a note that said, it was titled To Jim and Chris, and the note said, "The Buddha is in the game room." And of course Jim and I kind of looked at each other and closed the book and went immediately to the game room. And you know, it's another story whether or not the Buddha was in the game room, but the point is it was the emotional tone that created, well, I won't say created, but it opened the possibility for that connection between the inner and outer world. And we know that the law of attraction seems to be similar in at least some ways. And so if you're familiar with the law of attraction, the idea behind it is pretty simple. It's that whatever's going on in your inner world attracts what's going on in your inner world. It manifests into the external world. And you know that that this doesn't have to do with thinking. And so if you've ever tried the experiment, I've tried it countless times. It's worth trying just so you can see how it doesn't work, where you think very forcefully that you've got $1 million in the bank or whatever, fill it in with X, whatever you really want to happen. And no matter what the thought is, no matter how forceful it is, no matter how long you think it, it doesn't seem like it works. So the law of attraction doesn't seem to be about thinking either. It also seems to be about creating an emotional tone. And so if you've experienced the law of attraction, it's about the emotional tone that's going on in your inner world. So if you've got gratitude going, this feeling of abundance, this feeling that everything is absolutely perfect as it is, it can really be amazing to see how cooperative the external world becomes, and all kinds of doors open and more possibilities. And even though you're like, look, I have everything I need, it's like the universe just throws more at you. And the opposite of that is when you get into the kind of that sensation, that feeling of poor me, and it feels like everything is going wrong. And then you may notice that the universe closes doors, and all of a sudden it seems like nothing seems to go right any longer. And both of these seem to be connected to that emotional tone, and there may be some physicality behind this. Again, I do still talk about the material world, though it may be under the microscope now more than ever. In fact, I may soon do a video on the hypothesis of the material world, just on that alone. But there may be something to this. If you've ever checked out the Heart Math Institute, I'll put their link in the description. And they talk about how the heart generates an electromagnetic field that far exceeds that of the brain. So, of course, the brain is an electromagnetic machine in a way, and it generates an electromagnetic field, and the earth generates an electromagnetic field. And so these are things that are measurable. But the heart electromagnetic field, it could be 10 feet, it could be even much more vast than this, and people are not exactly sure. But that's the underlying idea about how emotions, particularly when people are connected emotionally, it could be that could be the physical basis for it. And if you go to the Institute, they'll show you how in moments of collective tragedy, you can actually see how all of the collective of our emotional fields can be measured. And so NASA keeps track of the Earth's electromagnetic field. And there are times in emotional distress, collective emotional distress, where you can see that this becomes measurably, that you can measure the change in this. But the point is that we have been so dominated by thinking that, and we're so convinced that thinking is going to get us out of so many of the problems that we're experiencing. But at the same time, if you look back at our species, not just our species, just life itself, life had been feeling for millions of years before it began thinking through Homo sapiens. And so the process of thought is so new, and it's shown itself to be so illusory. So we like this idea that if I have a thought of choice, and people have been in the MRI chambers, and I've talked about this in other videos. So if I just have the thought of when I'm going to do something simple, like move a finger, we know that the brain makes that decision maybe 6 seconds before we have the thought that we're going to make that choice. So in that way, the thinking mind has been shown to be illusory. The self, that is nothing more than a construction of thoughts, has shown itself to be illusory. But what about feeling? Now, when I'm getting at feelings here, I'm talking about feelings that have been not I did this in another video where I talked about how the thinking mind can hijack our emotions. But what I'm talking about is the emotional world that has not yet been influenced by the thinking mind, or the thinking mind has been turned down so much that we get to experience our emotions in a way that is primitive. It's very similar to the way our ancestors may have experienced them. And that's what I think the shamans were getting at. They realized that this emotion that we experience is what manifests itself in the external world. So let me hear some of your synchronicity stories, or maybe you have some good stories about the law of attraction and what you think of it, if it has some kind of physical basis to it. But the most important part is how it's the connection between the inner and outer world is not one about thinking. Thinking seems to divide us. It seems to create this illusion. It seems to create the border between us and everything else, where feeling seems to be more of a bridge.